Okay, welcome to today's webinar, Stop Your Mac Binding Woes with Jamf and JumpCloud. My name's Nick Thompson, and I'll be your host today. Special guest is Greg from JumpCloud. Greg, welcome. If you could just explain what you do at JumpCloud.
Well, dude, Nick, it's great to hear your voice, and I'm super honored to be here and speak with the Jamf community. I run product for JumpCloud, and basically what that means is the business units that are responsible for the creation and the vision of the product, i.e. product managers, or the sort of technical evangelism and articulation of the subject matter, i.e. Product marketing management, are all part of my team.
That's great. And thank you again for joining us. We're always honored to bring in our partners to deliver webinars like this that really enhances our mutual customers here. So let's take a look at our agenda, what we're going to cover today. So we're going to do brief overviews of each company so people are familiar with what we do. Then we're really going to dive into how do you do this binding thing? How do you bind your Macs to a cloud-based directory like JumpCloud? Then we're going to talk about how you can leverage your users and groups that you create for different management tasks and what you can do with that. Then we'll talk about how do you improve your security with some unified controls both inside of JumpCloud and inside of Jamf. And again, we'll wrap up with some next steps and some Q&A. So to start off with, I'm going to do just a brief overview here of Jamf. So anyone who may be not familiar with us can have a nice baseline here. So this is our mission. We help organizations succeed with Apple. We only manage Apple devices. We don't manage Windows devices, and we don't manage Android. That allows us to stay laser focused on everything that Apple is doing, both for the enterprise and for education. And we do this with our two products, Jamf Now and Jamf Pro. Jamf Now is really simple mobile device management, no IT required. And Pro is really management for IT professionals, the entire lifecycle management. When you look at the two products side by side here, you see Now, again, is all about easy device setup, simple management, versus Pro goes through configuration, deployment, app management, inventory, etc. And you can see what the two products look like side by side, both web-based, where you log in using a modern web browser and conduct all of your management tasks there. Now, today's webinar will primarily focus on Jamf Pro. If you are a smaller organization, though, I highly recommend that you check out Now. And a little bit about who we serve. We serve over 15,000 organizations to manage over 10 million Apple devices. And you see us in the traditional markets that you might find Apple devices out there, like tech companies and marketing groups, but we're also in the Fortune 500 and some of the top valuable brands out there. And something that we're extremely proud of is how many schools that we help too. And we've been doing this for a while now. We've been managing Apple devices for over 15 years. And something that we hang our hat on is to be able to support all the new features that are released every year from Apple. Most recently with High Sierra and iOS 11 this fall by providing day zero support for all of the new management capabilities that are within Jamf. So that's a little bit of an overview about us. And of course, joining us today is JumpCloud. So Greg, could you give us a little bit of an overview of JumpCloud?
Will do. And I'll have you, as my slide expert, advance the slides. Why don't we jump to the next slide? So for those who are unfamiliar with JumpCloud, we are known as a directory-as-a-service. We do one thing, and that is to build and deploy in the cloud are the most authoritative source of identity that our customers depend upon, i.e. a directory. We often say, and frankly, the community looks at us as sort of the next evolution of traditional directories like Active Directory or LDAP. So if you are familiar with those technologies, you will absolutely understand what the focus and the intent is of JumpCloud. You can advance, Nick. When you look at JumpCloud's Directory-as-a-Service, Look at it as a core directory service that is surrounded by protocols, and we'll talk about those in a second. But in the middle are user accounts, and those user accounts can be associated with myriad resources, be it networks like any of your Wi-Fi or VPN networks, systems like Mac, Windows, and Linux, applications that live on-prem or in the cloud, and of course files, meaning the data that may live on file servers. So why don't you go ahead and jump? So in the middle of everything, as mentioned, are user accounts. And in the cloud, JumpCloud stores these particular, and secures these user credentials. The cool part about JumpCloud and one of the most renowned parts of our product is we actually don't store any real passwords. It's all done through protocols that issue the hashed and salted versions of credentials. So it is a hyper secure piece of technology that really is the source of truth of your identities. You can flip to the next one. One of the first and most notable protocols that we emit an identity through is our Radius services. If you search Radius as a service, undoubtedly you'll find JumpCloud, and that enables you to connect a user account to wireless access points, to VPN clients, et cetera, all through our Radius services. What this means is that you never have to build a Radius client again or a free Radius server on premise. Why don't you flip to the next, Nick? Files also that may be living on-prem in NAS devices or Samba servers can also be directly connected to and authenticated for access directly from systems like Windows and Mac systems, as an example. And you see a few samples of those that we work with. You can go to the next. Applications are basically cloud-based, like any of your most notable SaaS applications or on-premise legacy applications are all supported, again, through a single set of credentials. It doesn't matter where the app resource lives. Our version of the identity can connect to it and authenticate it. And lastly, systems. This is really one of the most notable things JumpCloud is known for, and frankly, the intersection between us and Jamf. If you look at Jamf and JumpCloud as sort of two concentric Venn circles, we intersect at the Mac. JumpCloud is responsible not only for Mac, but also for Linux and for Windows as well. So it is a true cross-platform directory. But today, obviously, we're going to be focusing on Mac.
Wonderful. Thank you, Greg. What a great introduction to JumpCloud. And that intersection is exactly where we're going to focus on here for our next section is how do you do this whole binding thing? How do you bind a Mac to JumpCloud? Well, I'm going to walk us through what it looks like to really just do Apple management in general using this particular framework. We're going to start off with deployment. Then we're going to configure our Macs. We're going to lay down some apps, do some inventory, lay down some security policies, and also provide our users a unique way to get services from IT without having to submit a ticket. So let's walk it through from an end user's perspective here. We are booting up a Mac now for the first time. And the end user is going to select, which country they're in right through the familiar setup assistant. They'll choose their keyboard region, and then they'll connect to a wireless network. And this doesn't actually have to be the corporate network at this point. It could be a guest network, but it just needs to talk to Apple's activation server because this next screen that we see here is what's the magic in deployment. We're leveraging Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager to do a zero-touch deployment where this Mac will now be automatically configured and managed thanks to an integration that we have. Now, typically, when I hit Next here, it's going to ask me to create a local user account. But we are actually going to skip that. And this is a screenshot of Jamf Pro controlling how that setup assistant behaves. And the specific feature that we're doing right here is skipping the account creation. Now, Greg, why on earth would we want to skip the account creation during the setup of a Mac?
This is a great segue. So if you can skip to the next slide. Well, it's because this is where JumpCloud can take over. It doesn't mean utilizing Jamf and JumpCloud, you have to skip that step. But for the purposes of this kind of flow and this walkthrough, we're going to demonstrate here that the JumpCloud administrator can also deploy a user account onto that box. So what you're seeing here is that Mac that Nick was, quote, building or the user was booting up. Part of that Jamf Pro installation process was to lay down the JumpCloud agent. We're going to speak about that in a little bit more detail in a second. It's very analogous to a Jamf agent or a Meraki MDM agent, very similar secure technology. What you see here is the green checkbox saying, yep, that Mac is booted up. It has created a handshake from the endpoint to JumpCloud through port 443, and the agent is alive and waiting for instructions. So go ahead and click to the next slide. So what you see here on that Mac is the administrator choosing a user. This is a user inside of the directory. This is a fictitious person, Justin Boyle. And we've selected Justin to be the user account on that machine. And notice here, I can make Justin a sudoer or a standard. It's entirely up to the JumpCloud administrator what they want to do. So you can advance to the next slide.
So then the Mac continues with its setup, and we get a little notification as the end user here, right, where it says installing some software and security settings. And if we zoom in and kind of figure out what's actually taking place behind all this, we wirelessly provisioned this Mac using zero-touch deployment thanks to Jamf. We've installed some software in the background using some volume apps, and we've applied some security settings using mobile device management. But as Greg showed earlier here, we're doing a little bit more too, because something else has popped up in our menu bar.
Exactly. Thanks for the segue. So now that this Mac is alive and has its software provisioned, what Jamf Pro did, in addition to laying down the agent, is instantiate one of the core and new releases we're about to unveil, and we're doing that here today, is our macOS app. So this is currently in early access. And what the app does is enable the user of this machine, again, as you can see, this is Justin Boyle, to be able to change and control their credentials directly from the Mac endpoint itself. No need to go to portals, just as if this was, frankly, an old school Active Directory machine or bound to an LDAP. This is all being issued from the Mac app through our agent. Now, notice here that in this screen, Justin is setting his password, including a multi-factor authentication verification code that you see here. JumpCloud, and we'll talk about this in a moment, supports that completely. But why don't you go ahead and go to the next slide. Once this password is saved, what happens? That's the core thing. Of course, I didn't go into system preferences and kind of change the password there. I'm using this sort of this JumpCloud enabled app. Now, if you click to the next slide, Nick, the moment that password was changed from the Mac endpoint, it is issued through JumpCloud and directly influences all of the resources that employee, Justin in this case, is connected to through JumpCloud. Again, this is why you have a directory that is underpinning your IT infrastructure. So Jamf Pro helped us bind the Mac with our agent to the JumpCloud Directory service. It helped us install the macOS app. Justin, our fictitious employee, then changed his password, and instantly it is propagated out to all of the core other directories like Google or Office 365 accounts. That password was instantly changed. Any of the LDAP-bound apps that JumpCloud is servicing, like Atlassian or Jenkins or even Okta, instantly has its password. And if you move right, you can see it's a single system-generated password change that updates all of the employee's services. One password change, all services.
That's pretty cool stuff, Craig, and really great that you're able to announce that new product right here on our webinar. If we also take a look at how does JumpCloud work with Jamf Pro to do some other management, the big thing here is that it's all about syncing the users and the groups that you are creating inside of your directory in JumpCloud that you can then use for scoping of different services later on. And we'll be talking about more scoping here in just a minute. Now, Greg, you also have the agent management for Mac. I wonder if you could talk through the agent management just a little bit more here.
Absolutely. So just some further details on the agent itself. Think of, Jamf obviously has an agent and it's managing all myriad of security needs and, provisioning and scoping software that lives on the machine. In the case of JumpCloud, think of it as the agent that is responsible for the authentication, identity, and security. So it's the thing that can receive user accounts and all the password changes. You saw that a few slides ago. It also is responsible with respect to the password for the management of file vault and keychain. We're happy to announce too that we've recently launched the quote fix to many of the woes that our Mac community has seen with respect to secure token. We now completely manage that process of granting a secure token value onto JumpCloud issued users on the machine, so we can appropriately issue them and get them into their encrypted volumes in File Vault. And as mentioned before, we govern multi-factor authentication. You're going to see a screenshot of this in a bit. But in addition to the core password that JumpCloud manages, you can enforce multi-factor authentication on your Mac OS endpoints, either individually, maybe specific Macs you want covered with that degree of security, or all of your Macs. We don't really care. But your end users can input a TOTP key in addition to their password to get into their machines. And finally, event management. We know what is going on, who is logging in, and returning that information back to the JumpCloud event database management services for auditing and compliance reasons.
That's pretty great. And I know a lot of customers out there will be really excited about that file vault and keychain sync. That has been a pain point in the Mac community for a while. And so that's great that JumpCloud is able to provide solutions for that. So we talked about scoping, right? And we now want to leverage those users and groups for management. So what exactly can we scope using JumpCloud? Well, we can scope a lot of things from Jamf Pro. We can scope configurations and apps, and we can do some of our inventory on that and our security settings and how self-service behaves. So I want to walk through each of these really quickly here and just show you what does it look like to do configurations and apps and inventory and security within Jamf Pro so that we can have context for what that means for scoping within JumpCloud. So first off, with configurations, we're really leveraging mobile device management, which is the built-in management framework inside of all of Apple's operating systems to define various profiles and settings. We deliver those profiles all over the air using Apple's push notification service. And these are just little XML files that we build using Jamf. And we can do a lot of different configurations here, right? We can apply various restrictions and network settings and accounts like their Office 365 account. So it works with their built-in mail app. And we can we can lay down certificates and privacy settings and dock behavior and Finder settings. All of these can be scoped to the appropriate users and groups that are defined within your JumpCloud instance. So all of marketing has various restrictions and finance has different restrictions. We also go beyond MDM on the Mac side of things for management. That's our Jamf agent. And our Jamf agent is able to do additional things. It's a binary that gets automatically installed after enrollment, and it adds a hidden admin account and enables you to have remote root access to Mac. That lets you do things like install packages or bind to a directory or run scripts or create local accounts. Again, all of these things can be scoped using your JumpCloud directory. We can deploy apps to our devices as well too, whether those apps are using the volume purchasing portion of App Store apps, where you buy those things inside of Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager, and those licenses are read by Jamf, and then they're pushed out to your devices. Again, those can be scoped. And if you're wondering, well, what about apps outside of the App Store? Well, we also have the ability to do custom software installs, where you take a snapshot of an app and package it up and then deploy it out. Again, all of this stuff can be scoped using JumpCloud. And we also have a patch management framework built into Jamf Pro that lets you patch all of your software that's out there. And we can help automate the monitoring of those patches and the deployment of those patches. We can gather inventory data as well too. And this inventory data will help inform different groups that we want to create. So the inventory data can be things like the hardware information or the software information. And we can create really advanced groups. We can say either here's a static group, and that group can be linked to our LDAP group that we've created in JumpCloud, say the marketing group or the finance group, and we can apply a policy or a profile to them. We can also do smart groups where we are looking for certain criteria that says, find these devices that match that criteria, and then it automatically spits out those devices, and then we apply a policy to them. And lastly, we have this thing called self-service, which is really designed to save IT time. You know, it's complicated to set up printers all the time and filling out or responding to tickets and setting up file sharing for each individual user and setting up browsers. Instead, we can automate this all inside of self-service to provide, to really empower end users, where you get to populate it with your approved resources. And all of this can be scoped appropriately to who that user is, because we know those users and groups are synced in from JumpCloud into Jamf. And JumpCloud, of course, has additional tools as well too.
Yeah, very similarly, JumpCloud has to be able to provide services to the employee, to the actual end user of the machine, or in this case of our identity services, to make it easy. It's like hitting the easy button. As mentioned, the first is the Mac app. This is just bloody easy in order to get access to the core password and really understand what your identity means, all from your machine, changing the password and emitting that out to all of the various places. We've already discussed that. And the second is we do have a traditional web portal as well in order to get access to other things like the ability to trigger SAML-based authentication sessions into popular apps and managing some of your security preferences.
That's great. So now let's dive a little bit deeper into how Jamf Pro and Jamf Cloud connect together to do user and user group management.
So, Nick, you had a great setup. I want to kind of levy it like this and explain it like this. Scoping is a function of understanding a key aspect of identity management, authorization. In the world of directories, there's effectively a two-part process. First is authentication, and the second is authorization. Once you're authenticated, the system, in this case a directory, the JumpCloud cloud-based directory, knows, yep, Nick, we know who you are. You've asserted your identity. Great. Now that you're authenticated, let me authorize you. And what does authorization mean? The best example of that is groups. There's a reason why over the last 30 years, traditional directories, be it an LDAP or an Active Directory, really focus on the concept of group-based management. And this is integral to the relationship JumpCloud has with Jamf Pro. The screen you see here is literally from my JumpCloud console, my administrative console. Right now in this screen, I'm showing you that I am logged into and accessing the LDAP configuration screen. So again, think of JumpCloud as an LDAP, because we do fully support the LDAP protocol. You just don't have to manage a big old LDAP server or series of redundant servers anymore. All of that pain goes away. So click to the next slide, Nick. Once you're inside of our LDAP infrastructure, then you can see myriad things, like in this case, who are all the users that are able to be inside and issued through LDAP. So that's what this screen represents. And click to the next. What you see here literally is my Jamf Pro tenant, and it's inside of the directory configuration screen. As Jamf users know, it has a wonderful LDAP integration endpoint. You will go into Jamf Pro, go into the system settings in LDAP servers, and connect to JumpCloud in this way. We have it fully documented. This is, without question, a 3 to 5 minute process of setting up JumpCloud as the backing directory for, in this case, for Jamf Pro. You can click to the next. This screen shows you, once I've connected to, I've done a check against the LDAP endpoint. I wanted to find this guy, James Baylor, which I did. And it will also show me what groups, in this case, that this fictitious user, James Baylor, is a member of. And as you can see here, he's a part of the JumpCloud group, an LDAP group called Admin Jamf JSS Suite, which is an old group I've had predating even Jamf Pro. This shows you how long I've been integrating my stuff with Jamf. You can click to the next slide.
Yeah, so that really shows the tight integration that that JumpCloud has with Jamf. We should probably just call it that now from now on.
Yeah.
So now we want to talk about some security controls because, you can do a lot of security with Jamf on your Macs. And, I'm not going to go into all of these things, but you can do a lot of stuff, enforcing file vault, managing kernel extensions, restricting preferences, etc. And, all this can be scoped appropriately to your users and groups that you have set up in JumpCloud. You can also, of course, do specific commands to devices. Like if, your executive lost their Mac, you can issue a remote wipe or remote lock as well too. But JumpCloud has some additional security controls that are really, really nice for IT administrators.
Exactly. And I think the audience is seeing a theme. It's JumpCloud is first and foremost a security company. We just happen to focus on the concept of directory services to instantiate these ideas of security. And again, in this case, hardening Mac endpoints. When you think about us and the security controls we have specifically for Mac, number one, we are the entity that controls the password, meaning that the actual account password for the users on that Mac, we are governing its complexity, how long, how short. We also have the ability to suspend users remotely or change their the status that they're at. Are they a standard user or an admin user? Another popular feature that we have is the ability to control brute force attempts. So if someone gets a hold of a employee's Mac and they are attempting to bang in passwords, the administrator in JumpCloud can set how many attempts should be tried in succession before we then lock the account and notify the employee, in addition to the IT staff, that this is happening. And finally, as mentioned, multi-factor authentication. You actually see a screenshot of this, of, again, our fictitious user, Justin Boyle, we've been picking on. You see that the password is entered, and the second field you see there is for our own TOTP key generation that could be done via Duo for mobile or Google Authenticator, any thing that can create a time-based one-time password.
That's great. So it really shows you, again, how much JumpCloud plus Jamf allows you to secure your Macs. So let's recap here. We covered a lot. We talked about Jamf Pro and how it can do the total lifecycle management of Apple devices, from deploying them plus binding your Macs, laying down some configurations, deploying apps, gathering inventory, laying down security controls, all while using JumpCloud as a mechanism for scoping to the appropriate users and groups that we have. Just some tech details about Jamf Pro if you are using it. We have a cloud-hosted option as well as an on-premise option. Going in the cloud is just easier. It's automatic and easy upgrades, and we use AWS as our infrastructure. Plus, we have additional things beyond our product, such as professional services, training both in the classroom and online, and our expert support team with global call centers who are just really well versed in Apple. Plus, we've got our amazing community online, Jamf Nation, over 50,000 members strong, that talk about all of their different aspects to managing Apple devices, from directory services all the way to other things as well, too, especially that keychain sync issue. And again, we integrate with all of the different things that we talked about here today with Apple, from mobile device management to Apple Business Manager, Apple School Manager for doing zero-touch deployments and volume purchasing. And of course, JumpCloud as well, too.
So with respect to JumpCloud, anyone on this webinar that walks away, I would just want you to remember one thing. We were the first to really demonstrate the power of a cloud-based directory service. And this is what we focused on. It is, the most authoritative version of identity within your enterprise. It centralizes the chore of binding a user to all of the things that they need. Again, today we are really focused on Mac and showing how a user account and how a system can be bound to a proper directory and managed, in this case, with both JumpCloud and Jamf Pro. But with respect to JumpCloud, it's all the things, their networks, their files, and applications that can be either on-premise or cloud-based.
Great recap, Greg. Thank you. So some specific next steps here for you guys. If you're interested in Jamf, contact us. Go to our website and start a trial if you'd like to. And if you're interested in JumpCloud.
Yeah, I just want everyone to know the product is free. It is free in all of its capacities up to 10 users. So we really are inspiring small companies to large, anyone who is interested to understand the capabilities of what a cloud-based directory can do. We invite you to sign up for free, use it for free, and we want to grow with you.
That's a pretty great offer. Definitely something worth checking out if you're doing any sort of Apple management at all. So with that, I want to thank you for listening, and of course, thank JumpCloud as well, too. That concludes our main presentation here.
Nick, thank you.
So let's pull up some chat and Q&A. Let's pull up some chat and Q&A here, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So if you do have any, please feel free to send them in. Let's see here. So let's start off with. So again, we did record today's session, so if you joined late for whatever reason, we've got all of this will be posted on our website in just a few days as well.
I see a number of good questions coming in, Nick.
Yeah. Do you have any that you want to answer right off the bat here?
Yeah, let me kind of crank through these. They're great ones. Let me take William's first, and his question is, how do you provision the out-of-box device with the JumpCloud agent? William, good question. And we demonstrated a conceptual kind of workflow of that at the very beginning of this. To answer your question directly is, quote, it depends. We have literally hundreds of customers that use that we partner with Jamf to manage and deploy Mac endpoints and then govern the authentication. It's sort of a sequencing thing. In the early days, it is a function of Jamf provisioning and sort of creating the operating system instance and pouring in all of the software, including the JumpCloud agent. That was one way. We've even seen it done where Jamf controlled the first login experience to ensure that the employee was plugging in their JumpCloud credentials to, again, kick off a number of other sub-processes. And that was part of the provisioning world. With the new DEP world, it's like, frankly, what Nick was walking you through, that's another mechanism. So the device is enrolled, the device is drop shipped, the device is delivered to the employee, it is woken up and it finds a network connection, and then Jamf Jamf will kick in. It knows that that particular endpoint is looking for work, and Jamf will give it in sort of the capabilities of downloading software, including the JumpCloud agent. So it's really a sequencing thing. I would recommend either talking to the JumpCloud customer success team or the Jamf customer and support team, and we can give you a good playbook for that.
Well, that's great.
Go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
The next question comes from Robert, and it is definitely a JumpCloud pointed question because we get this all the time. And Robert's question is, how does your service compare with Azure's portal? So think of it like this. Think of JumpCloud owning the identity that underpins the Azure portal. In fact, we can even provision new user accounts that go into Office 365 or what is really under the covers, Azure AD. We are in control of that user account and its password. As mentioned, Robert, think of JumpCloud as think of it as an Active Directory, but just much more modern. And we can literally underpin the Azure service and own its identities. The same thing applies to G Suite, the same exact model. We can provision or bind to pre-existing identities up in the G Suite service. So I want you to walk away with that understanding. What that means is your employees can log into the Azure portal, they input their password to get into Azure, but remember, it's JumpCloud managing that password in the background.
That's great. There's some questions on the chat portion here as well too. First one from Sebastian. So for a company using both JumpCloud and Jamf Pro, what would be the preferred way of providing login? Would that be via the JumpCloud agent or via directory binding?
So that's an interesting question.
Yeah. And what happens? And there's a follow-up to that as well, too. What happens if a user wants to log in without an internet connection?
All right, good. Let me answer that first. Not a problem. So if your machine, your MacBook in this case, is unconnected, you're on an airplane with no Wi-Fi, no problem. JumpCloud's agent and its credentials store and cache the encrypted credentials on that machine, just like you would for LDAP or Active Directory. We do it in a similar way. There's no clear text information. We're just sitting on the hashed and salted password credential, and our agent does the check-in. It knows exactly what the last good password is, and will let you get into the machine.
That's great. Let's see. We got another question here from Scott. Does the two-factor work with semantic VIP?
I don't know. I can answer that in this way. I'm really unsure of all of Semantic VIP's kind of sub-features. I think the easiest way to answer it is this way. Our multi-factor authentication, because it has to go across all services, machines, and cloud-based services, right now is focused on the TOTP, call it a protocol. It's what TOTP means is time-based one-time password. That really amounts to a 6-digit auto-generated code that is generated from an application that is typically mounted on your iPhone, Android, or similar device.
That's great. That's great. So Brandon had a question. You're talking about our JumpStart. So we've got a couple of similar sounding services here. So for those who aren't familiar, our JumpStart is to help organizations get started right away. So that's kind of part of our professional services that we offer. How does JumpCloud help their customers get up and running?
Great question. So it's interesting. We have the JumpStart program. So what this means is as follows. IT people come in all shapes and sizes. Some are really hungry to work with people, and some love to do it alone. And I'm sure the people in the audience are probably in the spectrum there. For those that want to do it alone, that's why we have the full product free forever. You can, evaluate it to your heart's content and utilize our knowledge base, which is super deep, filled with content and videos, et cetera, to get up and running. For those that have bigger projects and really want to understand all of its capabilities, how to integrate the protocols with various on-prem and cloud-based resources, that's where our JumpStart program kicks in. So you get free access to our most senior technical representatives to literally pair with you for free for 30 days so that we can get you up and running and moving fast.
That's a pretty compelling offer there. That's really great. Let's see here. We've got a couple other questions about like existing Active Directory environments. How does JumpCloud leverage that or interact with that?
Great question. So it's interesting. JumpCloud is a alternative to Active Directory or can live copacetically with it. So in the first case, if you have Active Directory and you are a company that may be underutilizing it and are finding it hard to manage Linux with it and Mac and all these kinds of things, and don't want to have any on-premise baggage anymore, we have mechanisms to migrate you from it and into our cloud-based directory. For those that do have extensive domain controller forests and you're not necessarily thinking about moving away from AD, but really need simplicity to connect AD identities out to, let's call them hard to reach services. Like, for example, Linux infrastructure up in AWS. Mind-bending if you've ever tried to do the networking between, a cloud-based Linux host, effectively tunneling in through, all the VPN networks, et cetera, just to get authentication to Active Directory identities. It's brain damage. We simplify that. So you can use our AD bridge to connect your domain controllers into JumpCloud. AD then becomes the authoritative source of identity. We consume those identities and then use our protocols and agents to propagate the AD identities out to the various services. Again, think of it as the world's best utility to simplify emitting AD identities out to various resources. So those are the two use cases.
Great explanation. Thank you. So we've got another question here from Daniel about so how can we or can you do it provisioning of other cloud services and validate that they're running and maybe do any sort of reporting on non-compliant devices?
Awesome. This falls in the camp of both Jamf and JumpCloud. Nick, if you want to talk to Jamf first, because I know you have extensive capabilities there, and then I can tell you what JumpCloud can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to just show you briefly here our integration that we happen to have with Intune first, and specifically to provide conditional access for Office 365. So we have a whole integration with Intune that allows you to do conditional access to Office 365 information, where Azure and Intune actually evaluates the compliance of the device and says if it's compliant or not, and then block remediation or block it from accessing it, and even provide a remediation path. There's other things that you can do as well too, such as deploying packages like we talked about earlier that would be able to provision any sort of app or service that you would like to using a custom software install.
Correct. With respect to JumpCloud, it's extensive. So remember, Mac and Windows and Linux are just one of the endpoints connected to a user's identity, and the ability to report upon the configuration of that machine, the password complexities, is multi-factor turned on, is the machine full disk encrypted. All of these capabilities can be run through commands and other reporting vehicles from the agent to collect all that system-based information into the JumpCloud repository. That plus our event services make it very compelling for, call it forensics on specific resources, be it machines or when and if administrator users are accessing, changing things in the portals against their resources. All of that is enabled through JumpCloud. Again, think of the directory as it's the depot, the train station of identity for your employees to all the things that they need to connect to.
That's great. So we've got a great question here from Robert talking about how he's considering both Jamf and JumpCloud for his environment, and asking about what would be best to implement first, and what do they recommend as far as timing of getting things set up and running.
So again, nuanced question. And first of all, we're happy to hear that you're going to be joining a legion of people using our products together in the field every day, managing tens of thousands of endpoints. To answer your question, Robert, is this. When I have to sort of posture a bit for a second, but it is a function of what is important to your company at the moment. If instituting a proper and secure identity management solution is important, then instituting JumpCloud, getting the directory set up, getting it underpinning Azure AD, G Suite, getting your networks all sort of unified so you're not sharing SSIDs and passwords. Everyone's using their core JumpCloud credentials to log into things. If that is important, then clearly instantiating, building the directory first is important. Then slide, the importance, to another part of the spectrum. Perhaps we have a mandate to get our Mac endpoints under governance. This is a very common thing. For example, Macs. This company we're Mac nerds, full through. Our engineers use a mixture of Mac and Linux. We have, finance people on Windows here, everything. And the rest of the employee populace is using Macs. What we hear from our customers is very interesting, though. Macs largely get they're sort of like mushrooms that start to spring up, and they get bought, they get purchased. They're out of governance of a Jamf, a JumpCloud, or any DEP purchase. They're just bought, and every user account is an admin on it. It becomes chaotic. Now, so that becomes a problem. That is a major issue. How do you get those machines under compliance? Then a very powerful sort of use case or process to begin is get Jamf Pro implemented, integrate JumpCloud with it so you can start managing both the machine endpoint, hardening that endpoint, and then getting really serious about the security of the identity, the user access to that machine. That's where the powerful combination of Jamf Pro and JumpCloud comes into play. So a long-winded answer to really say to you, it depends. It's a function of where you want to begin your journey on really getting your IAM, your identity and access management game stronger in your organization.
That's great, and couldn't have put it better myself. So, yeah, a lot of the time it certainly does depend, and please reach out to both Jamf and JumpCloud, and we'll help you throughout the entire process. Also, Robert was asking if this will be if we can get a copy of this webinar, and yes, it will be posted on our website in a couple of days. If you go down to our resources tab and click on webinars, all of our webinars get posted here a few days after we record them, so you'll definitely be able to watch a replay of this. Got a couple other questions here. So, can JumpCloud act like a network access control? Are we able to suspend the connection to the company's network if, say, a Mac doesn't meet all of the security requirements?
Yes-ish. So there's stuff we can do now, and there's stuff that is in the pipeline. Remember, JumpCloud is responsible for the governance of your network connections. So as we mentioned early on in this presentation, one of the protocol endpoints that is supported by JumpCloud is Radius. So for those that are unfamiliar with Radius, think of that as another type of directory. We just combine that protocol and let JumpCloud's core directory be where the users are stored, but you plug in your devices, switches, wireless access points, etc., through our Radius endpoint services so that the JumpCloud user accounts and groups can govern them. So to the person who asked the question, the first part is, at any moment, you can individually bingo a person from a network connection, either through suspending the user or just pulling them from a Radius service, or you can add or remove them to the various groups that they need access to. For example, many of our customers will have, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 10, or we've seen as much as 50 independent, quote, Radius servers built with different service points, wireless access, VPN clients, et cetera, plugged into different JumpCloud Radius servers. This way you can control who has access to what. For example, you don't want all of your employees in the same user group as your engineering department's, privileged VPN access, right? So you can govern all of that. Now, that's the current stuff, wildly popular, works great. The future stuff is interesting, and we'll talk to you one-on-one if you're interested, but think of it like this. Conditional access that knows that a person shouldn't be or is attempting to be connecting to various networks through our ability to understand data and patterns. I'll leave it at that for now.
Great. Good question, or good answer there. Let's see here. Trying to pull up other questions that may have come in. There, of course, the question of cost both on Jamf and on JumpCloud. I'll just show you where our pricing page is. If you go to jamf.com/pricing, you'll be able to see how much Jamf costs. So we charge per seat, either per month or per year. You can do the calculations out there, and then we've got some optional onboarding as you get started. We talked about JumpStart earlier there. That's what this onboarding cost is. And Greg, do you have any comments about pricing for JumpCloud?
Yep. We keep it simple. First of all, the product is free up to 10 users. We charge on a per user per month price. It is a classic SaaS subscription model. We want to grow as you grow. The pricing for that is $7.50 billed annually, or of course we have per month pricing as well. So it's extremely cost advantageous. And remember, this is a directory covering all of the identity and access management, not just system management. So on a per user basis, you get their governance over systems, you get all their cloud-based SSO, you get their on-prem and cloud-based application support through, again, SAML and LDAP, and of course all the Radius access services. So that singular price governs that per user identity across all of their services. No support costs.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, combined, pretty great deal to manage your Mac and to have it be in your directory, or to have your users all be in your directory as well, too. So, Greg, any final thoughts that you'd like to tell everyone?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you, Nick. It's an honor to work with you and the Jamf team as we've done over the years, both over these webinars and, of course, live and in person at JNUC over the last 2 years. The community, the Jamf community, the Jamf Nation is our nation. So, again, we share so many common customers that are solving in our unique intersection the problem of securing and managing and deploying Macs and across the enterprise, no matter how big your enterprise is, 10 people or tens of thousands of employees. We're here to work with you.
Wonderful. Thank you again for joining us, Greg, and what a great solution JumpCloud is for those managing their Macs. Thank you, everyone. And again, we'll have everything posted on our website in a couple of days. Do reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Nick.